Hi everybody and welcome to a new video. Today we're going to be talking about my summer TBR. Although this is very ambitious for me, the amount of books that I have, for basically 2 months. And also I am just not someone who plans out my reading to this extent. So this is more like books that I would like to read at some point soon, preferably this summer, but probably not. However, that, exceeds the character limit for a title. So this is my summer TBR, kind of. So we're going to start off with fantasy, because now that I'm done with school for the summer, I'm so excited to actually get into some new fantasy reads, because I always find it difficult to read fantasy during term time, because generally they're a bit heavier, weightier books. So it's just when I'm reading all day for school, it takes up too much brain space for me, I guess, or it feels like more of an endeavor to start a fantasy novel. But I'm just in the mood for it right now. So we're gonna start with my current read. I'm right about just under halfway through The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig, and I'm absolutely loving this so far. So this is a newer, I think it's kind of a romantasy novel, although this definitely leans much heavier towards the fantasy side. And where I'm at right now, she hasn't even considered that she might be attracted to Rory, although it's two very hot people who bicker a lot, so there's obviously some tension, but it's definitely more of a slow burn than I feel a lot of book talk fantasy books are giving you lately, so I'm really enjoying that. And also he wears eyeliner and he's very Once Upon a Time Captain Hook, so it's working for me. So Sybil is a diviner. She's one of 6 diviners who essentially they are forced to drown and dream and give sort of prophecies to anyone who's willing to pay enough. So basically they're kind of seers. And she's been doing this since she was a kid. She's told that, they have 10 years of service to this abbey, and then they can, go off and live their lives. She has no memory of her life before. All she remembers is her name, but they're not allowed to use it. They have to wear this shroud over their eyes at all times. She's never seen her own face. So they really sort of remove her identity. And the new young king has come to have his future read. So Sybil is the diviner that reads his fortune, and it's just all bad omens. And she meets Rory, who's this knight. He's very insolent. He clearly is not believing in all of this. He's kind of insults Sybil. So they don't like each other. Sybil kind of doesn't like him in reaction to Rory clearly not liking her or respecting her sort of station. But while this is happening, right after the king arrives, diviners start going missing one by one. And Sybil is the last one left standing. The abbess, there's clearly something sketchy going on now. So Sybil kind of escapes with Rory and the king, and she starts finding out what their kind of plan is. They clearly have something else going on with the omens or their gods. So she's on a quest to find out what happened to the other diviners, but kind of gets caught up in something bigger. I love a medievalist fantasy, so I was all about this, and I think that it's very, very cool world building. It's a very unique concept. I think that she's done a great job with Sybil's character, because she's a bit haughty. She kind of looks down her nose at people, but she's also clearly very vulnerable, and there's a reason why she does. And she also has a lot of compassion for people. So I feel she's a very dynamic character, and I'm kind of at the point where she's starting to kind of have the rose-colored shroud pulled from over her eyes, and she's starting to kind of see the world as it is, and she's realizing that maybe the abbess wasn't, so upstanding, and that everything that she's been forced to go through perhaps is not so holy and so special as she thought that it was. So I'm kind of in the deconstruction phase of all of that, and I'm just really enjoying this. I think the world building is done very well. It's an interesting fantasy world. The use of magic is really cool. So I'm really enjoying this so far. My next book is another medieval-esque novel, but this one's sort of more in the horror genre, but I'm keeping it with fantasy because it's kind of fantasy adjacent, I think. So The Starving Saints is set in a castle that's been under siege for a very long time. And just as the survivors are starting to consider some pretty drastic measures to make sure that there's enough resources for everyone left standing, the Constant Lady and her companions arrive. Somehow they make it past their enemies and all of the barricades, and things sort of kind of descend into madness from there. It's a real like bacchanalia. So this is multi-POV with 3 women who sort of have like varying levels of trust for the newcomers and participation in this kind of like revelry that's happening. I don't read a ton of horror, but I've been kind of getting more into horror movies for the last couple of years, and I want to read more horror novels, but like this kind of like historical, like stylized horror is, I think, right up my alley. Like I like kind of aesthetically, like grotesquely pretty horror, or things like Heretic, which was one of my favorite movies last year. So I think that this is gonna kind of be like in the same vein, and I'm very excited for it. So next up, I have V.E. Schwab's Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil. So this is tagged as being about, you know, toxic lesbian vampires. So obviously I'm all over it. V.E. Schwab actually came to Oxford on her book tour a couple of days ago, and I've gotten tickets like months ago. So I got this book, a tote bag, and like a bookmark and stuff. It's signed, and they also had like a little like book stamp. I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but it's like stamped with the tour date and everything, which I thought was really cool. So I'm very excited to read this. I will read anything with vampires, obviously. And this is basically kind of like, again, 3 POVs, 3 women. So we start with Sabine in like the 1500s, and then we have Charlotte in the 1800s, and then Alice in 2019. And V.E. Schwab was talking about how each woman sort of like represents a different stage in her relationship to her own queerness and her own sort of identity, like feeling like you don't know who you are, feeling like you do know who you are, but you're uncomfortable with it, and then just kind of like owning it and being who you are and not really caring what anybody else thinks. But in like a very messy, violent way, I think. And this just sounds like kind of an unhinged good time, and I'm really looking forward to it. I will say the one thing I'm a bit skeptical about is that Samantha Shannon, who wrote Priory of the Orange Tree, was kind of like doing the Q&A. It was like her in conversation with V.E. Schwab. And when she introduced V.E. Schwab, she said the same thing that's like tagged on the back of the book, which is that it's like a genre-defying novel, that it's like doing all these crazy things with genre, and I just don't really buy that. I feel like, not that I don't like this genre, or that I don't think that this is going to be good. I just think that it is ground that has been tread before. Like, I don't think that this is doing anything particularly like new or exceptionally trailblazing with genre. Like, V.E. Schwab herself has done something similar with Addie LaRue. Like, that kind of magical realism, or like paranormal realism, it just already like exists. That's already an established thing. So that I'm holding some cynicism for, but I'm still really excited for this. I just don't believe that tag. And next up, I have Tenderly I Am Devoured. I think this one's actually YA. So I'm curious like how hard it's going to go with the sort of like gothic elements and the horror elements. Honestly, the title and the cover would be enough to convince me to read it. Thankfully though, the description also sounds fantastic. So this is also kind of like a gothic romantasy situation. It's about Lark, who goes to this very prestigious, you know, very aesthetic boarding school. But when she returns home, she finds that her very wealthy family is on the brink of losing everything. So in order to save them, she accepts a marriage proposal from a chthonic demon. You know, as one does, it's a logical jump from point A to point B. However, things obviously go wrong, and she kind of starts to lose her grip on the mortal realm. So she seeks help from these 2 very like mysterious siblings. One's a good friend of hers, and one is the first boy who ever broke her heart. The plot doesn't really seem that similar, but the sort of description and the setup reminds me of Between the Devil and the Deep Blue Sea, which I haven't read in like ages. I read that in like grade 8 or 9, I think, for the first time. And, you know, and I just loved like the coastal gothic vibes. The plot was like a bit weird, but I don't know, something about it just kind of like worked for me conceptually, and I think that this is kind of like maybe has similar vibes is what I'm hoping for. And lastly, in the fantasy category, I have Paladin's Grace by T. Kingfisher, so another very popular author that I have yet to read. And I'm pretty sure Paladin is like a Dungeons and Dragons thing, so I'm not sure if this book is like directly inspired by D&D or not, but from like a medieval history standpoint, a paladin is basically a very chivalrous knight, or I think sometimes even just like a nobleman, doesn't have to be a knight. But I think more specifically in D&D and kind of modern fantasy vernacular, they're like a specifically holy knight or warrior that's characterized as being really morally upstanding. So in this book, our paladin is feeling a bit lost because the god that he served is dead. And this is when he finds Grace, who's kind of a fugitive, and they witness an assassination attempt. So the two kind of have to like pair up to unravel this conspiracy that they've gotten caught up in. This just seems like a very kind of like cozy high fantasy. I feel like that's not something that you see a ton of. Like usually they're very like, those kind of more cozy fantasy series are kind of like low fantasy, like an encyclopedia of fairies, that kind of thing, which also love. But this seems more on the high fantasy realm, but those same kind of like, I don't know, maybe it's just the cover that's giving me those vibes, but I feel like this is going to be just like a very like homey kind of fantasy, if that makes sense at all. Next category is romance. Summer is the season of romance novels, as is every other season, but especially summer. So first up is Scotch on the Rocks by Elliot Fletcher. This is book 2 in the McCabe Brothers series, and Whiskey Business was one of my favorite romance novels last year. I love these covers, for starters. They're so beautiful. I love them. It's like a very modern homage to like the classic like 70s bodice ripper covers, and I just love them. So these books are set on the very beautiful Isle of Skye in Scotland. Fun fact, I was able to go there with friends last year on our Scotland trip, and collectively Isle of Skye was our favorite place. It's absolutely gorgeous. I would like love to be able to go back there someday. And so these books are a way for me to like live vicariously and be there. So I recently received a Kindle ARC of Scotch on the Rocks after like begging on my hands and knees to the publishers to please let me read it, because I just loved book 1 so much, and this one sounds so fun. And so I received it a few days ago, so score 1 for being pathetic. This is definitely one of my most anticipated 2025 releases, definitely in the romance genre. So that between this and Night in the Moth, I'm like flying high. Now these are intercollected These are interconnected standalones, so you can read them each individually, but I feel like it's fun to read them in order. And this follows the brother of our male main character from book 1. So he's like a local vet on Isle of Skye, and he's been kind of harboring a long-standing love for our FMC, who's actually the ex of the third brother. But they broke up like 7 years prior to the start of this book. Like, it's been a while, and I don't know how serious their relationship was. I can't remember if that was like explained in Whiskey Business or not. But basically, we've had 7 years of pining and yearning, so you know it's gonna be good. I think it's kind of like Black Cat Golden Retriever vibes, like a bit reversed, and I'm just really excited for this. It's kind of like mutual pining, but he's definitely like fallen first, and he's kind of gotten to the point where he's like, screw it, I'm just going for it. And the little teases we got of Callum and June in book 1, I'm just like chomping at the bit for this. I'm definitely gonna start this one after I finish The Night in the Moth. Next, I have Problematic Summer Romance by Ellie Hazelwood. I've actually been wanting to read Ellie Hazelwood's backlog for a while now, because I've only read The Love Hypothesis and Love on the Brain. I read both when they came out. I loved The Love Hypothesis, but Love on the Brain just really pissed me off, to be honest. I just hated Bea so much. Like, I found her really insufferable. Like, she was very, I'm not like other girls. Like, he just doesn't get me because I dye my hair and I wear galaxy print leggings. The whole, like, she had this one line that just sticks out in my brain. She was like, I love Love Island. Like, it's a really underrated show. Girl. And like, it was the whole thing where he's like telling her very directly, like, I really like and respect you as a person, as a scientist. I think you're attractive. And she was like, he hates me. Ugh. For like the entire book. It was so frustrating, and I just felt like her character never got better. And so I feel like that kind of like put me off from some of her contemporary romances. I do have Bride, which I'm excited to read. I'd started it, but I got distracted. So I'm going to go back to that one as well. And I do think that I'll also enjoy Problematic Summer Romance. Like, it sounds like a fun, kind of a new character dynamic for her. Like, I like that this is one where the FMC seems to, from the description, like, is aware and willing to admit that she, like, is into the male main character and is kind of like going for it herself. Whereas I feel like in a lot of her other books, it's just like very drawn out where the FMC is like refusing to admit their feelings and acknowledge the fact that clearly this man is like so down bad for her. So in this book, Maya is a struggling grad student and she's been kind of in love with her older brother's best friend for a long time now, but she's kind of given up hope because he's very adamant that nothing can happen between them. But when their brother has a destination wedding, they both figure like, what happens in Italy stays in Italy. So it seems like they kind of like agree to a summer fling, but methinks it's not going to be a fling. Next up, I have Sounds Like Love by Ashley Poston. I loved The Dead Romantics. It gave such strong like practical magic vibes, and that's like a niche that I just love. And so I'm excited for this book, and it's kind of like a similar like everyday supernatural kind of thing. She loves a ghost story, does Miss Ashley. So in this book, Joni is a successful songwriter who's kind of suffering from writer's block. So she decides to head back home to try to shake something loose, but nothing seems to be working until she starts hearing this like mysterious melody in her head. However, the voice isn't her own, and turns out it belongs to this like gruff musician who shows up in Joni's hometown. I think that this author is so good at capturing that like kind of bittersweet tone, and this one seems like maybe a little bit less morbid than some of her other books. Like maybe like grief isn't as heavy of a factor in this one, but I feel like there's still kind of like a melancholy to it, but that's kind of balanced with like humor, and I don't know, it's just like a very specific kind of like tone that really works for her writing and for these books. So I'm really looking forward to it. And I'm excited to see sort of how she integrates like music into this. And Joni's the perfect name for a successful singer-songwriter. So I'm looking forward to this. I think it's gonna be really fun. And I feel like she has such a unique voice in sort of the romance landscape. My last romance novel is Left of Forever by Tara Dewitt. Honestly, with this one, I'm very sold by the cover because hello, Tom Selleck. Also, she has Kate Hudson's hair from How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, so gimme. So Ren and Ellis are childhood sweethearts who had their son when they were just teenagers, but later their marriage kind of fell apart. But now they're in their 30s and they're helping their son move into college. And Ellis convinces Ren to kind of take a road trip back home together to see if they can kind of repair their relationship. So the thing with this is that it's a second chance romance, and I'm not usually for those because they just make me too sad. Like, I love angst, but not this kind of angst, you know? Now, obviously, there are exceptions to the rule, so hopefully this is also one. I think it will work for me because it's not like they've been separated for like 20 plus years. Because yeah, it's sweet that they've made it work after all this time, but what about all the time that they missed out on? I can't move past it. Maybe they can, but I can't. But I think this one has been like 7-ish years. So I'm walking in hesitantly, but with optimism. My last category is kind of like literary fiction, general fiction, things that didn't fit into these other categories, but I don't totally know how to describe them yet. So we're just gonna put it under literary fiction. So first up, I have Taylor Jenkins Reid's new novel, Atmosphere, a Love Story. So this is set in the 1980s. Joan is a physicist and she's training as one of the first women astronauts at Houston's Johnson Space Center. So as she bonds with these kind of like eclectic and impressive group of candidates, Joan rediscovers herself despite the high stakes. So I'm really curious how Taylor Jenkins Reid is gonna fit this into the kind of like universe, metaverse that she's created. And I feel like this is kind of a different vibe from a lot of her other books. So I'm really excited for it. I like the concept of this. I think it's gonna be quite interesting. I don't know if it like compels me as much as some of her other books has, but I've heard really good reviews. It's supposed to be great, and I'm into it. I'm not super into like the astronaut thing, But I feel like here it's gonna work. I feel like it's gonna be such like a ragtag group of scientists, engineers, etc. And I'm going to vibe with it. Next up, I have Hungerstone by Kat Den, so more vampire stuff. So this book follows Lenore, who's married to a wealthy steel magnate, but their relationship has kind of become a bit distant, and they move to London, where Lenore meets the very like mysterious but alluring Camilla. Bit of a dangerous name, as anyone who's into the vampire lore will know. So as Lenore is increasingly drawn to her, girls from local villages are sort of suffering from mysterious illnesses. I will read anything with vampires, honestly. I don't care what genre or interpretation we're talking about. I love them all. But one of my favorites is this kind of mystery, like lit fic style artsy thing. Like this sounds like a blend of A Dowry of Blood and Lucy Undying, which are two of my favorite vampire novels that have come out in recent years. So give it to me, I'll take 14 of them. It seems like it's kind of like a slow-paced, like weird kind of thing, and I'm here for it. And lastly is Die My Love by Ariana Harwicks. Hopefully I pronounced that right, I'm not sure. This one's really motivated by the Jennifer Lawrence and Robert Pattinson movie that's coming out, which is supposed to be really good and like weird as hell. So I'm so excited for the film, and I would like to read the book. I don't actually know if I want to read the book before or after I see the movie. Usually I would say before. But I feel like this is the kind of thing where like maybe you would want to see the movie without having like any kind of preconceived idea of what it's going to be. So TBD. This takes place in a French countryside, and it's kind of about like a woman spiraling. She's both happy but craving something else out of life. And contrary to a lot of books with this kind of concept, her family's actually like very supportive of her needing space and kind of going through this. Like even as her behavior gets more and more erratic, they like continue to kind of stand by her. But that kind of seems to make her feel more stifled. Like one of the tags says she's craving family life, but at the same time wanting to burn the entire house down. I'm sure lots of people can relate. It sort of sounds like it's exploring kind of like similar ideas to Night Bitch, which I haven't read the book, I've just seen the film, and I felt kind of meh about it. Like, Amy Adams, I think, is one of the best actresses working, but I feel like I don't know if she just didn't lean all the way into it, or if, like, the script wasn't there or what, but I just wanted it to, like, go harder than it did. But yeah, I'm really excited for this and to see the film, because I think it's going to kind of, like, lean into the weirdness a little bit more. And this might be a hot take, but I think Arpads is extremely underrated as, like, an artsy and interesting actor. Like, that's not really a hot take because he always gets great reviews and praise for like his roles and his performances in those roles, but I think that he should be like on par and compared to like the Timothée Chalamets. Like, give this man an Oscar. Why is he not on those red carpets? Give it to him. It has nothing to do with this book. Well, it kind of has something to do with the book, but not really. But I'm excited to read the book. I enjoy this genre. I like unhinged women. So, of course, I want to read this. So yeah, that is my overly ambitious summer TBR. Let me know if you've read any of these books or if any of these are also on your list. And yeah, I'm super excited to get into this. There will be reviews galore. I definitely mentioned some of these in my vlogs as I'm reading them, and I'm hoping to post more kind of videos like this, so I'll probably do some like reading recaps of some of these as I move through them. So yeah, thank you for watching. Definitely stay tuned for more.